transitions in agri-food system, but from the lens of nutrition also. I think that I developed a little bit from some minutes ago. So I think perhaps it's the rescue of globalization. And the question mark is here. It's very important because this question takes on all its meaning during indirect impacts on food systems. So I'm not talking about the direct crisis at the food systems level, so climate or the hunger and so on, but some indirect impacts on the food system during periods we already know now, illustrated by the COVID-19 epidemic of pandemic. So actually the food crisis has shaken the distribution, as you know, and the consumption system, because mainly it was built at the level of the globalized system. And I put this paper because it was written by a couple of French and Indian authors, and I would like just to focus on that point, saying that the agri-food has become the priority industry, and from that priority, so there were some consequences and impacts and two characteristics. So the first one is the globalization, and the second one is the agro-industrialization. But at the same time, so just to tell you that during that COVID crisis, so there were several papers so focusing on that particular aspect of distribution and consumption issues. And what is suggested by several of these authors, it is to improve the global food security, to develop shortened supply chains, as developed also by Frederic, and to analyze and customize the consumer behavior towards essential food systems more carefully. And it means that there are some, in our food, there are some non-essential food items according to this paper. So it's also a point that can be debated. The COVID crisis has also shown the limits and weakness of the global food system, but this global food system has been really successful during the past 20 decades, at least in the developed countries of Western Asia. But they become also a central issue in public, scientific and political debate on several aspects, but also until the local democratic life, developed also by Frederic at the level of the organic farming, but also at the level of society, culture, environment, and the land development. But again, so even if these crises have shown the limits and weakness of the global food system, so they reveal also, this crisis revealed also another way of food supply, and particularly in France, where a niche process launched in 2014. So the government asked the different territories to develop what is called the PAT, so the Projet Alimentaire Territorial or Territorial Food Project. So just to show you that the territory concerned, for instance, the small orange territory in France, so it is not like where I have my own house. So actually, what was observed, it is that despite the disruptions, so the food supply chains have been maintained during the first weeks of lockdown. So there is something which was buffered, let's say, against these disruptions. But how? By a transition towards a more responsible and sustainable food system, by doing so what I explicitly before, and with some impacts, particularly for the retailization of the food system and the emergence of several multiple diverse food systems. And the authors of these observations and these papers, they propose some perspectives, particularly a movement for transition of the food system satisfying at least the two needs. The first one is to strengthen the resilience of the food system, not only at the watershed level, but also at the food chain level. So perhaps this dimension also will be included in our debate later on. And the second point is to increase the performance and impact of the food system in X. So the X becomes also the primary point, but without forgetting the environmental and social terms, which with more direct links between producers and consumers, so the kind of short food supply chain, so we are going to talk about that, and with better organization of logistics solutions. The COVID crisis has also highlighted this famous or this important short food supply chain, and this paper, but there are many others, so they clearly show that there were some very positive impacts of this the short food supply chain in all the dimensions of the development. And if we want to focus just at the nutrition level, so it can contribute to increase the food production quality, it can promote the healthy diet, and also to reduce the responsibility. Now, if you go now to the Ukraine war, again, so it was clear that this war jeopardizes the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, the transition towards healthy, equitable, and ecological sustainable system, and this should be, or must be strengthened by adopting urgent and long-term development policy. So, again, there is something, so through the war, so the crisis at the food level. Why? Because mainly the low-income countries, so they were completely dependent on particularly food and fertilizers from Russia and Ukraine. And the other point is also the fact that the Ukrainian war also tend to increase the indices of grain price. So the recommendation coming particularly from the United Nations institutions, it is this one is particularly focused on African countries, but it can be extended to other countries. It is to reduce the dependence for food imports. So somewhere the food sovereignty is coming up from this Ukraine war. And I just would like also to underline that in France, our Ministry of Agriculture, so as underlined by Monique yesterday, so the name of the ministry has been changed from Ministry of Agriculture and Agroalimentaire to the Ministry MAZA, so it means the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Sovereignty. So it means that already before even the war, so the France had started to think about the sovereignty. So what would be the nutrition view of sustainable transition in agri-food system? So it's very difficult because if the parties unrevealed some consensual requests for a quick transition to more sustainable agri-food systems, I try to also to perceive the place of the nutrition in those transitions, and perhaps to explicit how can we analyze this place of nutrition in the transitions. So I just want to take some definitions of sustainable agri-food systems, which is considered as some system delivering food security and nutrition. So it means here that the nutrition is associated with the food security on one hand, but without compromising the three pillars of the development, so economy, social, and environment, and obviously for the generation to come. So here, so there is a link in our transition process we are working on. There is a link between nutrition and food security on the one hand, and to the environment issues on the other hand. Now, what is the definition of food and nutrition security? Then, so we can take the definition from 2012 from the Committee for World Food Security. It is said that food and nutrition security exists when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food which meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. So in that definition, so nutrition somewhere is coming not at the level only of nutrition, but also at the level of nutritious foods and the dietary needs. So we are still, in both definitions, we are still at the level of nutrients, not really at the meals or at the diet level. But if you go further, so if you take these reports coming from the United Nations institutions such as FAO and OMS, so not OMS, so WHO, so there is a key research inside which is very interesting to define what is the nutrition inside the transition. It is said that the food and security nutrition is something related to the diet quality, and the poor diet quality can lead to different forms of malnutrition, including undernutrition and micronutrient deficiencies, as well as overnutrition, so regarding as overweight and obesity. So this time, so you have a new definition, not definition, but a new qualification of nutrition by saying about the diet and the quality of the diet. So it means that when we use here the term nutrition, it could be not enough clear. And if it is not here, so it can go to the objectives somewhere. So I think that we need first to define clearly what is nutrition, in our case, working on sustainability of the food system. And actually, so when you go to the diet quality, so this paper from Edmond, so in 2020, so say that we can go from subsistence to health. So it means that there are 3 levels of diet quality: energy sufficient, so based on calories; nutrient adequate diet, so based on the needs of nutrients. But there is another one, which is the healthy diet. So it includes foods from several food groups and then greater diversity within food groups. So you know now, so you can see the complexity, let's say, if you go from the nutrition to the healthy diet. So it is very complicated to include, let's say, in our problem or in our issue of nutrition transition. But actually, there is also something else, because the question is, can we say that by providing a diet, it's sufficient to sustain the body health? Actually, it is a real question, because if you look at this map is showing I have to read the percentage of population who cannot afford the healthy diet. But I would like you to focus rather on the developed countries, okay? And now, if you go to another map, which is the share of adults that are overweight or obese, even if it is a little bit before, so in 2016, so you can see that actually the healthy diet affordability is inversely somewhere related with overweight and obesity. So because most of the least color developed in the map on the left-hand side are getting greater in the right-hand side. So even the healthy diet, so it's very difficult because the affordability is there, but actually the obesity also is there. So to try to understand that, so we looked at what is happening in India, so at the level of nutrition, of the transition, but looking with the lens of nutrition. So here, what I want to underline is if you look at what is happening at the level of overnutrition, so the surveys made from 2005 until 2020, so you can see that the overweight for men and women, so increased from 9 or 10%, let's say, until 30%. But at the same time, if you look at what is happening at the prevalence of undernutrition, it is going down. Okay, so perhaps there's a remark from Rajeshwari by saying that in India there was a lot of diversified diet. Yes, it could be, but at the same time, even if the affordability of the diet is there, so perhaps we can explain this contrast prevalences between the overnutrition and undernutrition. So why and how can we explain that? So just to answer to the question of Rajeshwari about the transition, so this study has been made in my lab. So what we looked at is the nutrition transition and chronic diseases in India from 1990 until 2019. So actually what we saw is that this kind of intake improvement of fibers, all minerals and trace elements, all vitamins, the prevalence of overweight, obesity, and diabetes increased in the same period. So somewhere, so the food have been balanced, but at the same time, you have an increase of obesity and obesity. So there is one reason for that, because there is a correlation or association between this prevalence increase and the calories intake. But if you look at the calories, it's very small. It's not as 3,000 or 4,000 as in the United States, for example. It's just from 17,000 to 23,000. This is one point. But if you look further inside, so the sugar consumption, the free sugar consumption alone explain 18% of the total calories. So this could be one possibility to explain why, despite of biodiversity at the food level or the food level, you have the prevalence which is there. But it is not the case. Actually, when you look at these calories, so what we did is to look at the industrial processed foods. So we cannot speak about ultra-processed food because in 1990 it doesn't exist, not yet, at least it was not defined as that. So we looked at what would happen if we plot the prevalence against the IPF or industrial processed foods. So here you can see a very nice association as well for the three prevalences, so obesity, overweight, and type 2 diabetes. So there is another question behind that. The question is, where are these diseases coming from? So I think that, and we think, because we published another paper also on that, by saying that the chronic diseases are first associated with the degradation or artificialization of food matrices. So after reviewing a lot of papers, so we arrived at that conclusion by saying that the calorie quality matters more than calorie quantity. Exactly for the diet. The diet quality is not healthy diet. So just to summarize what we found is to say that matrix effect, which is more holistic and the qualitative fraction of the foods, they can help to prevent the chronic diseases, whereas the composition effect, so the nutrients, so which is more reduced to the foods inside, so can prevent the deficiencies. So now if you, by having all these concepts, all these ideas, so there is something which is coming up, at least from my mind, let's say, is to say we have to enter the food system for consumption of balanced healthy diets together with the environment-friendly produce. So somewhere, so to find out the kind of concept of balance between dietary pattern and complete pattern. In other ways, so the complete pattern should be, let's say, developed under the dietary pattern, not below. And this is so from this view, so we developed a program or project, so actually which is a living lab project called Towards Climate Smart and Nutrition Sensitive Food System, developed by INRAE, so the PIs are INRAE and the IIT. And that program, so that living lab project, so it is built on 3 pillars. So the first pillar, which is actually the second, but it is the core of the project, it is to say that we need the agroecological transition, because if you want to be climate smart, if you want to have a climate smart food system, so we start with something at the production level, but without affecting the environment. And we, at upstream and downstream level, so we introduced the nutrition as the pillar 1. But by asking the same question, so how to develop the nutrition question inside this program, but towards population health, and how to balance then the coping and dietary pattern. But the question once said, the answer is not very easy to find out. So we need to, let's say, implement, not at the feed level, but at least to modeling, let's say, this approach, in order to look also at the third pillar. What could be the impacts of the social and economic level of the agroecological transition, but from this pillar number 1, which is the driver, let's say, of the agroecological transition. So another point also, it is when you look at the study, so looking at the global burden disease, so it is said that sometimes it becomes that there is an increased availability of cheap, highly processed, nutrient-poor food impacting the lowest income countries. And there is this framework proposed by the author. But if you look at this framework, so you can see that you can start the food supply chain, that is not yet, the food supply chain, and then the food environment, individual actors, and the climate is coming at the end of this framework. So somewhere it is not the objective, the initial objective, it is food supply chains. Now, if you want to just to think and to move from farm to fork to farm to farm, it means that this part of diet, we are going to put it in front of this chain. It means that this time there is a demand. We want something, we want diets which are healthy, and we want to eat, not to be eaten. Okay. If you enter by this way, normally we can expect that the supply regarding this demand should do something. And if you imagine what could be done, then all the issues discussed from yesterday and this morning, I think that we have to do something. So this is the concept. So in India, actually, the diet, let's say, is also completely unbalanced. That yield is going down. We don't need yield. We have to invest in wastage, and then the yield could be even a little bit lower. So it's very important also, I think, for me, from my side, it could be important also to have this view. So to summarize, and I'm not going to summarize, I just wanted to, because of the short time, so the last sentence, so into innovation. So one of the questions was how to formulate a new idea, new concept. I think that innovation, not at a technical level, but one innovation could be so to go from farm to fork to fork to farm, and downscaling also the global to or the downscaling of global to local food system. I think that short food supply chain would be not a solution, but it would be a buffer, let's say, against the crisis. Thank you very much for it.
Long live India and France friendship.